I want to tell you the story of something that happened when we were visiting Ajahn Kanha. Is there was something about one of the first Dhamma talks he gave where he so clearly connected that suffering comes from a sense of self, that when I was sitting there, I really saw more clearly than ever before that actually the suffering, when it arises in my system and in my mind, it's also a way of, in a really friendly way, pointing out where I can practice next, where my sense of self was arising, where it was getting inflamed, so that I could practice well with it. And by practicing well, that would be the soothing ointment, exactly the antidote that I needed to progress in my practice. So I remember after that Dhamma talk, sitting in the meditation hall in the shrine room, and I was having this experience of seeing suffering so clearly in the people who I have the closest relationships with, in my family members, my closest friends. It was like I could pick up all of their suffering, and just by holding it, I could intuit one word that would sum up their suffering, like what was in common with all of their dukkha, like whatever ailed their sense of self the most. So for one person, it could be arrogance, another person, it could be shame. For another, I saw cowardice, fear. But I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, I realized what I was doing, and I thought, why the heck am I doing this for other people? That's not going to help me awaken. I need to do it for myself. But what was handy was because I was practicing doing that with my loved ones, then I could very easily, because now I knew how to do it, I could easily apply that to myself. And I use the word easily lightly here, right? Because it's never as fun to apply it to oneself. And yet, that is what we need to do when we want to progress in this practice, progress in this path. So I was like, all right, let me point this new tool toward myself. And I sat there for a while. And it did not come as quickly to me when I was working on myself as opposed to other people. I'm just going to be totally transparent with everybody. But yeah, I was sitting there and I just kind of picked up all the instances of suffering that I had encountered recently at the time. And I could feel that there was something in common with all of them. And as long as I stepped back enough into that witness perspective, as much as it was uncomfortable to do so, I could I could really feel that there was something, some common thread underneath all of them, running through all of them. And as I picked up enough of those episodes of suffering, I realized that what was in common with all of them was impatience. And of course, I suffered in other ways, but really that was what was underneath all of those recent episodes of suffering. At the time, I so badly wanted to be a published writer. And at the time, I so badly wanted to have a biological baby. And the thing that was causing me the most pain in all of those experiences was impatience. You know, impatience for a book deal, impatience for a successful pregnancy. Yeah, so then I was like, all right, now it's like now I know the name of my opponent. It's like when you shake hands, when you, I don't play chess, but I have seen movies and documentary footage of people who are very serious, high level chess players, right? So it's like when they shake hands before they play a game of chess. So it was like, oh, now I have shaken hands with the root of my suffering. Let's play. And it was, there is something to be said for not needing to label our difficult feelings and such. and just working with it, for stepping back into the witness perspective and observing it as it rises, sustains, and ceases. And there is also something to be said for knowing the face of your opponent. And once I learned the face and the name of my opponent in patience, then it also made it a lot, first of all, a lot more fun. And I love to have fun. And it also made me a lot more sensitive to when impatience was arising. And there was something about knowing its name that also, I felt like I had a lot more determination to learn this opponent, learn impatience, to befriend impatience, to bow to impatience as a very wise teacher. And how do I know, by the way, how do I know that impatience was the main flavor of my suffering? Yes, there was an intuitive hit. Yes, there was this feeling of aha, of truth once the name, the word arose in my mind. And also I have the luxury and privilege of having, I had Kyle with me on that trip also. So immediately after that morning meditation session, we had our midday meal. And I remember I was crouching with Kyle behind this giant bench because we didn't want to be seen, because it's hard to, private time is hard to come by at a giant monastery with one other person. So we were crouching behind this bench, and I was like, oh my gosh, Kyle, guess what? I think I have discovered the main flavor of my suffering. And Kyle's just, eating their food and being like, oh, okay, well, what do you think it is? And I was like, I think that all my recent encounters with suffering have impatience in common. And I think that's the main flavor of my suffering. And I think that's what I really need to work with. And Kyle nearly dropped their spoon, and they just like suddenly became a cartoon character. Their eyes became as big as teacup saucers, and they turned beet red, almost purple. And they were just like, I'm staying neutral, right? I'm not reacting, right? I mean, I'm letting you go on this journey yourself, right? And it was so very clear. And it was so nice to have this cosign from someone who I trust so much, someone who I respect and think of as so wise, and someone who loves me so much, who witnesses my life so closely, my practice so closely. It was so nice to have that cosign from Kyle also, from that obvious visceral reaction that impatience was indeed who I had to befriend the most. And I say that because sometimes, and I've shared this experience with some people, and sometimes people reflect on this themselves and want to practice this activity themselves. And sometimes people reflect on this and they name an opponent, or they name a teacher, their one main flavor of suffering. They name this one main flavor, but what they pick as that main flavor is a symptom of what ails them, not its antidote. And I'll say that one more time. Sometimes people pick a symptom of their disease, not the antidote. Okay. So here's an example. There was one such person who I know very well. And when I told them about this exercise, they were like, oh, I want to also contemplate the main flavor of my suffering. And I was like, all right, go for it. It's been working for me, so maybe this will work for you. And they thought about it. And after a while, they came back to me and they said, I think that the main flavor of my suffering is trust. That because I don't trust other people enough, and they want the best for me, but I don't let them help me. And I was like, mm, oh, okay. Like, if you think that's your one word, then that's so great. And I'm really happy that you discovered it. And she knew from my reaction that I didn't agree. And this is someone I know very well. And I know this person is open to my feedback. But anyway, at first, I don't I don't offer feedback unless people ask for it explicitly. So she said, I know you disagree. And will you please tell me your perspective? What is the main flavor of my suffering? And I said, actually, I think it's kind of the exact opposite. I think the main flavor of your suffering is your struggle with self-worth. I think the antidote to, uh, or like what you need to progress most is to befriend your self-worth. The Buddha said that no one is better than anyone else, no one is worse than anyone else, lower than anyone else, and no one is equal to anyone else. And to me, a lot of the times when I interact with you, it seems like you put yourself lower than other people. And they reacted in a way where we were walking side by side while we were having this conversation, and all of a sudden they started like deep breathing, and they said, I need to sit down. And they sat down on the curb and just started crying. And I could tell that the crying was in a really good way. And from what they were saying to me in that moment, crying from relief, release, from gladness and gratitude. And there was this visceral reaction when they found their word, and it seemed like perhaps some clear steps had unfolded before them in their path. So I am suggesting that perhaps when you find the right word for you, that it hits a nerve. And maybe when you confirm this with the people who you trust and who know you well, maybe they will also maybe it will also hit a nerve for them. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know your close friends. Maybe not, but maybe. All right. And it was just so fruitful and so rich to work with impatience for especially the next few weeks and months. And I just discovered so many things about it. And I'll also tell you what did not work. What did not work was just the feeling of gritting my teeth and white knuckling on impatience and just thinking, oh, I will just breathe my way through it, and I will just not be impatient. That did not work for me at all because I had such strong conditioning in that very specific way. So just telling myself, I'm not going to do that anymore, it was completely ineffectual. But what actually did work was this feeling of humbling myself to my conditioning. And whenever impatience arose, that feeling of, all right, what can I learn from you now? How can I not duck or hide from that suffering, but really bow to it as my teacher? When I feel into the suffering, when I hold it as a witness and observe it and just let it and feel that feeling, that uncomfortable heat of impatience, what is it telling me? What insight lies buried in the center of that suffering, of that impatience? And that was very rich practice. And I remember and all these things are easy to say intellectually, aren't they? We all know them intellectually. But finally, I felt in my body that the world unfolds in its own tempo and rhythm. And the anatta, the not self, the uncontrollability and uncertainty of only being able to do so much to help it unfold the way and at the pace that I wanted to. And if I try to push it so that it unfolds faster, it just creates more heat, more suffering for myself and the people around me. And even if it seems at the time like I'm getting what I want, like something to happen faster, it really comes at a cost of my own energy, the energy of the people around me. And that cost was not worth paying anymore because I was opting for peace instead, a higher and higher happiness. And there was also something that I was feeling, I really grew up with a lot of urgency and striving and that kind of energy in my life, which really helped me get A's in my AP classes and helped me get a lot of praise in my jobs, blah, 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 all these worldly things that, can be nice on some level, but not as nice as awakening. But anyway, I was really realizing that the world, like the universe, bigger than the world, the universe has a certain rhythm so that when I dance with the universe, it's like I am playing in the pocket. And that phrase comes from like jazz and funk and a lot of rhythm based music, where musicians do not necessarily play on the exact perfect beat. And this is perfect for me because I grew up playing competitive piano and violin, not to live up to the stereotype, but I did. And I spent a lot of time in my youth having an electronic metronome go tick, 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 and playing exactly on the beat and running scales and arpeggio drills to the tick, 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 tick. And it was always prized. Like, how fast can you play those scales? How fast can you play those arpeggios? Can you play this really fast piece of music? Ugh. But rather, when in other musical genres that are not classical piano, there's this thing called playing in the pocket. And that's when there's like a swing where sometimes musicians play just a little bit ahead of the beat or a little bit behind the beat. And it's about playing intuitively and instinctually instead of on the mathematical metronome beat. And I realized that the universe has that flow also, and that I can also find how to play in the pocket of the universe. And there's a certain pace where things are just juicy and just right, and it's not prescribed. It's not something you can know intellectually. It's something that is felt in the body. It's instinctual and intuitive. And when I play on that, in that pocket, things tend to work out better than I even imagined. And then there comes a time where the main flavor of your suffering will change when you practice well with it. It gets less and less hot, less and less daunting. And then it's like the sensation if you ever go to the beach and there's like fine, dry sand, it's an interesting sensation to just scoop up a handful and it stays still in your hand. But if you squeeze it really hard, it just filters, slips through your fingers, and soon there's just nothing left. It's like that. So at some point, that main flavor, that one word, will not haunt you anymore. It has not haunted me anymore. And like, sure, sometimes I still do feel impatient, but it's with a little I now, not a capital I. And and then for me, it shifted into something else. And then that became my main flavor of suffering for a while. And that was a whole other adventure. So I wish you a rich, fruitful adventure. If you like reflecting on the main flavor of your suffering and learning how to bow to it as a dear friend and a wise teacher, may we practice well.